territory. For instance, USAID.
Uh-huh.
What Doge is finding about that is, pretty horrible. A lot of people think that that stands for aid, U.S. aid, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like grant money to poor countries and all of that. That's not
Right.
what it is. USAID is not a full subsidiary of the State Department. At least it's going to be, but it has not been. It's
Mm-hmm.
really been a piggy bank for the CIA. And that's mainly how they've been used around the world is they come up with some pet projects or some excuse to
Mm-hmm.
do, to change the gender of rats in Central America or, some stupid thing like that. And, people buy into it. Oh, that's okay. Well, they didn't know about it. That's what the problem is. But most of the screaming about Doge is that people are going to be laid off that don't want to be. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the problem is that's what, no administration has addressed this for decades, that the
Exactly.
federal government has gotten way too bloated, way too many people,
Mm-hmm.
and not any attempt to do something about it, then the people that are entitled are
Right.
screaming bloody murder.
Right. 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 See, we
And
have.
you also have the group of people who are crooked, who
Mm-hmm.
who got kickbacks from some of these crazy projects around the world,
Mm-hmm.
that had nothing to do with helping a poor country or an ally of the United States or anything like that. It was just a way to throw money
Mm-hmm.
out of a program. And like I said, the program was basically like a piggy bank.
Yeah, this is the topic that we're gonna have today. The first topic, actually,
Okay.
I'd like to discuss with you about these NGOs, and this they have a superpower that most of people don't know. But first of all, let me just introduce our start our program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Cheyenne's Forum. Today is March 3rd, and right now the time is 12 noon at Pacific time. Welcome my dear friend Tom. Tom, how are
Thank
you?
you. Good to be here.
Yeah,
I'm
thank you
fine.
so
How are you?
very good. Thank you. Tom worked in FBI for almost 30 years, and he worked as assistant director of FBI for 5 years, and he's retired now. And he spent about an hour every week to discuss the situation, the news with us, and I really, really appreciate it, Tom.
You're welcome. I
Yeah.
appreciate your, followers watching.
Thank you so much. And the things change rapidly. We have so many things happening within the week. Just like we discussed before the program start, USAID. And now we got a new information from Elon Musk, and he states that 7,000 politically connected NGOs control 90% of taxpayers funded money, and about 300 billion flows into those organizations each year with little transparency. And so he called this is one of the biggest scam of all time. And according to the data Republican, seven NGOs back up AID, sorry, and the State Department act as executive arm of the bipartisan coalition that promoting propagandas in the name of protecting democracy. So my question is, for how long these NGOs start operating like this? Can we call this legal stolen money? Or why does every government like Bush, Clinton, Obama, Biden don't care? Nobody cares. Nobody check into this NGOs. So so how long does this happen?
Oh, this has been probably forever. The NGO is basically a non-government organization,
Mhm.
is an organization. It's not directly a federal government or it's like contractors. And somebody wants to start a charity and call it a charity. They can register and say, okay, we're an NGO,
Mhm.
non-government organization, so we're not exactly, full-time government. But if you look at it, for example, Catholic Charities.
Mhm.
And then a couple of other religious charities are actually getting millions of dollars from the government to facilitate illegal immigrants crossing the Darien Gap in Panama. Now, what's interesting there is, and of course that's probably come to a screeching halt now with Trump finally closing the border,
Mhm.
or I'm saying the government finally closing the border thanks to Trump. But that Darien Gap in Panama is you know the highway that goes from the south tip of South America all the way up to Alaska, except there's a break in the highway in Panama because of the jungle and some lakes and whatever. So the illegal immigrants basically were camping there until they could get the NGO to set up their transportation by boat or whatever around the jungle and then back onto the highway, back onto buses to
Mhm.
come to North America and then to the United States specifically. And
Mhm.
so, that's gone on, and nobody's paid any attention. It just sounds good. Catholic charities. Well, that
Right.
sounds very, noble,
Mhm.
the religion and everything like that. And it was just a way to hide uh, the money going from our government to facilitate illegal immigration into the United States. And
Mhm.
then that's just an example of just how many of them. Now, one interesting in my travels around the world when I was running FBI international operations, I'd go to an embassy, various countries, and there would be a full-time USAID person working there. And I would be told about that person, or I'd go meet the person, and they didn't want to talk about what they were working on. They didn't want to do it, and they didn't want to, we're there maybe to try to build up the police and try to set up relations, closer relations between the
Mhm.
FBI, specifically U.S. law enforcement and law enforcement in that country. And
Mhm.
the representatives of the State Department, very eager to talk, let's work together and set up a project together. But the USAID, they wanted to keep their distance, not even talk. And it was like, okay, these are a secret, supposedly secret organization, but under the name U.S. Aid, people would say U.S. Aid. It
Mhm.
sounds like a benevolent association to provide money to a poor country, a grant program, a grant and aid program. And
Mhm.
it was basically, their pet projects. And I say they, it
Mhm.
could be members of Congress or it could be the deep state
Mhm.
in that country handing out money for whatever purpose they wanted. Now,
Mhm.
you look at some of the things that Elon Musk has uncovered, and it's totally embarrassing. And finally, Trump looks at that and says, that's it. We do not need this.
Mhm.
Money going to these countries or any other country around the world should be part of the grant programs administered through State Department. So the
Mhm.
functions that were supposedly U.S. AID are now going to be moved over into the State Department.
Mhm.
But as Elon Musk has revealed some of the projects that have been done, Americans are just astounded. How could this get approved? How could people go along with this?
Right. Right.
Creating a Sesame Street for Iraq in Arabic, or transgender surgeries on rodents in Central America, or transgender on people in those countries, things like that, that
Mhm.
Americans are going, wait a minute, this is not useful aid that promotes the United States mission around the world. It's just a handout, like a candy store for
Right.
whoever has a pet project in the various countries.
Yeah. I'm just curious, Tom, how USAID got their money, got their fund from Congress. So the Congress will give them the fund every year, but you
Yeah,
have to
every
have a
year.
process.
Give them the money and no real questions about it.
But no audition, just give the money like so easy. We're
Yep.
talking about millions of dollars each
No,
year.
no, billions around the
I'm
world.
sorry, yeah, billions of dollars each year. And then before they give the money, there's no addition, no audit. There's no audit or nothing. Just give it to them,
Yes,
whatever they're asking for.
yes. And now along comes an administration that promised to look into all these wasteful spendings and everything,
Mhm.
So Donald Trump says, like every other president has said for, history, that, oh, we're going to eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse and inefficiency and bring scale down the federal government, all these things they promise until they get in office and forget about it. So now you have a president who keeps his promises. These are all promises he made that he was going to look into waste,
Mhm.
fraud, and abuse. And when
Mhm.
you're looking at this kind of money being spent, mostly fraud or abuse or corruption or it's fitting into one or more of all those categories.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I saw some people, they are, well, being fired from USAID, and they just come out of the building and they cried and they said, if we lost our job, there are people on the other countries who lost their life because they depend on us to give them food, to give them the medicine, everything. And
No,
looks
no,
like
but
they're
that's
doing.
not what USAID is doing, giving them food and medicine and sustaining the country. Those
Mhm.
kind of grants in aid come from Maine State Department. The ambassadors that are in those countries and the staff in those countries that report back to the State Department, this country could use, X amount of dollars
Mhm.
for whatever, for aid. And but USAID disguises themselves like that's what they're doing. But they're not doing that. So
Ah.
nobody's starving to death overseas if USAID
Mhm.
stops existing.
Right, right. And they also state that we're doing something to push our democracy idea to all over the world. So we're doing things the good for American. So what do you think
Well, when
about?
they're handing out money and it's pretty much corrupt money going
Mhm.
to probably corrupt officials in many of those, they don't know what that, putting on Sesame Street in Arabic in Iraq, really? They need that? That helps the country?
Mhm.
That helps promote when that country right now hates the United States, even though, we went in and eliminated Saddam Hussein's regime and everything. And there's no gratitude for that. They kicked us out. So, I was the first FBI on-scene commander in Iraq in 2003, the summer of 2003.
Mhm.
And we had invaded Iraq in March and basically occupied the country shortly after. And there was no, Iraqis didn't appreciate the United States. And
No.
so, not too long into the administration, they wanted us out and
Mhm.
kicked us out.
Mhm.
And the net result of the Iraq war, which was a mistake from the beginning anyway, the net
Mhm.
result was it provided more power to Iran in
Mhm.
the region. And
Mhm.
that's where that power is right now, Iran.
Right. Right. Tom, it really surprised me that when I learned that the USAID can have the money they asking for every year without any checkup. So basically, whatever they ask, the Congress just give to them. It doesn't matter what they do with the money. So at
Well,
least
it's
I
kind of
think.
like it's kind of like the CIA. It's, more or less a subsidiary of
Uh-huh.
CIA to do whatever projects and, good things and bad things around the world.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
been happening since they were formed in 1947.
Right.
So, in fact, every president, including Truman, who signed the bill to
Hmm.
create them in 1947, regretted it. He later regretted not that the CIA's stated mission was to gather information,
Hmm.
central intelligence, to gather intelligence about all the countries in the world,
Hmm.
who are our friends, enemies, whatever, what are they going to do, and give those reports to the State Department, to Congress, to the White House, and basically say whether it's the various agricultural production in those countries or industrial production, what the GDP was of the country. So the country books, the fact books that they would produce on each country,
Hmm.
tremendously beneficial to know the state of the state in each country around the world.
Hmm.
But what wasn't expected by Truman and the rest of the presidents was that they would create this covert action authority, which enabled them to go in and overturn governments, to create coups in various countries and and get away with that. And
Mhm.
Truman himself regretted that they had that authority, and then Eisenhower, and then even though they basically tried to take advantage of it.
Mhm.
So even the Kennedy administration hired members of the CIA and American mafia to try to assassinate Castro, and they were just
Mhm.
unsuccessful in Cuba to do that. But
Right, right.
that's many of the missions of the CIA was to overthrow government, especially during the Cold War. Any country, the only countries that they didn't do that, say in South America,
Mhm.
50 countries, they tried to overthrow every government except the
Mhm.
military dictatorships that were pro-US anti-communism. Whether
Mhm.
it was Pinochet in Chile and the junta in Argentina, some of those regimes, well, that was all right because they're on our side. They can be complete dictators. They can be whatever. That's okay because they're against communism. That's the main thing.
Mhm.
And so, that's been the legacy all the way up to now. Our CIA, along with MI5 from England,
Mhm.
overthrew the elected government of Ukraine in
Yeah.
2014.
Mhm.
And so, at the time, that's what led right at that time. Ukraine had been a strong ally of
Mhm.
Russia,
Mhm.
going back to when they were part of the Soviet Union. So
Right,
since 1991, they were a strong ally.
right.
And, one of the things that when they split up the Soviet Union, it allowed some of the republics to become independent countries like Ukraine. When that happened, the Russians, Soviets, basically let Ukraine become independent, but take with it the eastern part of Ukraine, which was Russian basically, and the Crimea. Now, the Crimea has a naval base called Sevastopol that's been a warm water naval base, and it's been the main warm water and only warm water base of
Right.
the going back to the Soviet Union, Soviet Navy in the 1700s.
Mhm.
And at that time, going back to those days, the two main naval bases that the Soviets had, and then later Russia, Murmansk in the north of Russia, which is basically under ice half the year,
Mhm.
and the warm water port of Sevastopol, which gave their ships, surface ships, access to the Black Sea and then, all the way down through the Bosphorus, Aegean Sea to the Atlantic. And all of a sudden, when we overthrow the government of Ukraine and upset what was a
Mhm.
good relationship between Russia and the Ukraine, that's when Putin says, "Okay, that's it. We're taking Crimea because we cannot lose that base." Now, originally,
Mhm.
England and France formed an alliance in the 1850s
Right.
to invade Crimea. There was a Crimean War, and that
Mhm.
was the idea. Now, the Russians defeated them
Mhm.
and it prevented that. But ever since then, when the Ukraine itself was formed, Crimea has been a key part of Russia. First the Soviets, then the Russians.
Mhm.
And Putin, I think, intelligently looked at the situation and thought, if the CIA and basically the United States can overthrow the elected government of the Ukraine, which
Mhm.
was our ally, what's next? And
Mhm.
that's why they took Crimea. And
Right.
so you've heard all this talk in the recent
Mhm.
times that led to the war where Russia invaded Ukraine 2 years, 2.5, 3 years ago.
Mhm.
And that was based on the fact that Ukraine was never going to join NATO and they were never going to do
Right.
all these things. And then suddenly we put in a puppet government,
Mhm.
followed by a second government elected Zelensky.
Mhm.
And and then then Russia realized we better do something. We cannot let NATO uh,
Take
take
up.
over the
Right.
Ukraine and put all of these American troops and European troops and everything like that. And so that's what led pretty much. You hear people say now, Putin started the Ukrainian war.
Mhm.
Well, he really didn't. We started it going back several decades, but in the recent times, we started it in 2014
Right.
when we engineered a coup and overthrew the elected government of
Mhm.
the Ukraine, right?
Mhm.
We're for democracy. No, we're not. We overthrew their democratically elected government. The president fled to Russia, and then they put in these puppets. And of course, the current puppet is Zelensky. And then Zelensky's the George Washington of the Ukraine. Oh, he's so great. We support him 100%. He comes in there, he puts his opposition in jail, and
Mm-hmm.
then cancels the election. So his term as president expired, I think, more
Right.
than 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and he canceled the elections. So he's not even a duly elected leader of the country.
Mm-hmm.
And then he basically closed down churches.
Mm-hmm.
And Ukraine, Kiev is the original home of the Orthodox,
Mm-hmm.
basically Catholic Church in Eastern Europe.
Mm-hmm.
He shut that down for the most part, shut down their newspapers,
Mm-hmm.
locked up any reporter that would say anything negative. So he created a dictatorship for himself,
Mm-hmm.
which is not democratic in the slightest bit. But we
Mm-hmm.
had some idiots in Washington. Oh, he's a Democrat, or we've got to support him. Even to this day, when Trump and him have the argument in the White House last
This
week,
is something I
oh,
asked
how
you.
evil Trump is. We've got to support them. And now you have the Prime Minister of England, Starmer, make a speech over the weekend. They're
Mm-hmm.
going to back Ukraine all the way. They're going to even, he says, put boots on the ground and planes in the air in the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the side, he says, of course, the U.S. is going to back this up. So, in
Yep.
other words, we talk big, even though the United Kingdom no longer has a military that could do anything
Mm-hmm.
outside of the UK to
Mm-hmm.
speak of. And so he's bragging, and they don't have the money to give Ukraine. They don't have the resources. They don't have any of that.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's but they're going to support Ukraine with the U.S. backing. So, in other
Yep.
words, the U.S. is still going to, and somehow either he or Zelensky still think that they're dealing with the crooked government of the United States run by Joe Biden, who
Which
had
is a big
taken
mistake.
millions from the Ukraine and is now, the payback is giving them back billions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Since you talk about Ukraine, talk about Zelensky, and my question is Zelensky just said, I think early today, that he's ready to come
Oh,
back
he's yeah,
to
he's
sign the
ready.
contract. So do you think Trump will accept it or just no contract at all?
I don't know. I think probably they'll give in maybe and let him come back and sign these papers. But one of the questions that I have, a huge question
Mhm.
about this mineral deal
Right.
with the Ukraine is that when the Donbass and the eastern provinces of Ukraine said a couple of years ago and had an election where they voted to rejoin Russia. They
Hmm.
mostly speak Russian. And
Right.
since 2014, when we took out the pro-Russian or agreeing with Russia government,
Hmm.
the puppet government that was put in ever since then, and the base of the Ukrainian military is Nazis, neo-Nazis, and they began shelling the civilian population of the eastern provinces that are pro-Russian, the Donbass region
Right.
along the Ukraine-Russia border. And
Hmm.
so Putin had told Ukraine, stop killing basically our people, the Russian people, which they didn't,
Hmm.
among other things. And then they talked about joining NATO, which was definitely,
Hmm.
something against Putin. Then they used NATO provided rocketry to bomb cities in like Moscow in Russia
Hmm.
and using these law, which is an act of war. And so you have all of these events that were going on between Ukraine and the Russians, but
Hmm.
oh, we're going to bet Ukraine stands for democracy. No, they don't. They just don't.
Hmm.
Now, the Ukraine has tremendous mineral wealth in the ground,
Hmm.
and most of it is in the territory now controlled by Russia, the Russian. So now what's going to happen with this deal?
Hmm.
You know, uh, that's one of the reasons that Zelensky doesn't want any negotiation with Russia
Hmm.
because they're going to need Russia to approve it if they're going to go do, mining in the ground
Hmm.
in the Donbass, in those cities that are now under, for the most part, Russian control and continue to be bombed by the Ukraine. So I don't know what Zelensky really controls, what he really has to make any kind of a big deal with the United States.
Hmm.
But it sounds good. He's going to have, mineral agreement. Now, in Trump's mind, as he's been talking about this, he's basically saying, okay, if we have this agreement on, first of all, from Trump and the US point of view, if we don't have this mineral deal, whether we can get the minerals out of the ground or not, if we don't have the deal, we get nothing. And we gave $350 billion to
Mm-hmm.
Ukraine,
Mm-hmm.
which about probably a third of it was stolen by Zelensky and his people, and so they could
Right.
build big houses around the world. And
Mm-hmm.
and then much of the military equipment that we've sent over, they've sold on the black market
Right.
to enrich themselves even more so they could build more mansions.
Mm-hmm.
And, a good example of that is you see video of Mexican cartel members
Mm-hmm.
walking around with surface to air, the latest technical equipment, Javelin missiles that are about $1 million a piece. So here's Ukraine selling this advanced weaponry that we sent them to
Mm-hmm.
Mexican cartels, which are going to be used to shoot down our aircraft if we actually end up in a full-scale war with the cartels. Now,
So if
right now, we have troops on the ground in Mexico, and that's expanding. So we'll see where that goes in terms of the military equipment.
yeah, so if Zelensky is person like so dishonest, why we deal with him? Why
Oh,
bother
because
to
we've
find the
built up
contact with
the
them?
neocons in this country, and some Democrats and Republicans alike have built him up in the last 3 or 4 years like he's the George Washington of the Ukraine. No, he's
Not.
been a massive crook
Mhm.
uh, all along. And then I think what happened in the White House last week was a combination of things that Zelensky, since he lost Joe Biden's ability to just come in and say, I need another $1 billion, send it. Now
Uh-huh.
he doesn't have Joe Biden. He's got Donald Trump. And
Mm-hmm.
then on top of that, as was pointed out in their meeting in front of the cameras, which in a way is a good thing that this thing was televised,
Yeah.
J.D. Vance basically uh, criticizing Zelensky that in October, 1 month before our presidential election, he went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for Kamala Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Now you talk about a stupid act because even by then, honest polls pretty much said, she has no chance. Now the
Mm-hmm.
dishonest polls and the Democrats, oh, she's going to win. No, they should have known, and he should have had the common sense to
Mm-hmm.
stay neutral, just in case, not knowing who was if you want to say that they didn't know who was going to win, okay, then you don't go back Kamala Harris.
Mm-mm. Right. Right.
So
Some people said that the globalist actually behind Zelensky and have him come to the White House and destroy Trump's agenda. So they do that in purpose. So what do you think? Intentionally? What do you
sure,
think?
sure, the globalists are going to be on his side and all that. Now the interesting thing, the countries that are globalist
Hmm.
don't have the resources to back Zelensky. So they can talk a good game.
Yeah.
Oh, we want world peace. We want that. And
Hmm.
we're backing Zelensky, again, the George Washington of the Ukraine. And just like the UK Prime Minister over the weekend, we're going to have boots on the ground and planes in the air, and we're going to support them. And we're behind the Ukraine 100%. Oh, yeah, by the way, with US money, with
Yeah.
US backing it up.
So
And the
it's just
US, that
empty.
might have been Joe Biden. That's
Uh-huh.
not Donald Trump.
Hmm. So he's really not smart. He didn't know that American has changed and
No,
Donald
and
is
then,
not. Uh-huh.
it sounds like a little thing, but you go to the White House and show complete disrespect
Right.
not wearing a suit.
Yep.
You're not as a pretend head of state. He should look like a head of state
Mm-hmm.
because he's going to meet the United States head of state.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, he looks like, the janitor just walked in. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that just contributes to this. He doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know enough, statecraft
Mm-hmm.
to really be a diplomat, to really represent a country, even if he was the George Washington.
Right.
You know,
Right.
could you
So
see George Washington going to an international meeting in a t-shirt? No.
he's not. He's a jerk. And then also something I realize is that since the world start, the only person represent Ukraine is Zelensky. Nobody else. He's the only one, the one and the only one to present the Ukraine and Ukraine people. So the whole all over the world, we're talking about we should stop the war or we should continue the war. But I just feel we did not, or we have no chance, no channel to know what the Ukraine people think. We cannot
Well, the
hear their
channel would
voice.
be if they had the slightest idea that they would back Zelensky, he'd have an election. So he canceled the elections. He
Mm,
knows he can't win. He has no popular support. And
mhm.
J.D. Vance had mentioned they're trying to grab kids off the street and throw them in the back
I
of
saw the
cars
video.
to make them go in the military, so where they can be killed at their Eastern Front. And so that's not, he doesn't have the support of the public. And that's why so many million Ukrainians fled the country.
Right.
And now
Right.
you have neighbors like Poland and other countries saying, we don't want them anymore. We'd
Hmm.
rather they go back, but they aren't going back. Most of those people were interviewed saying we're never going back.
Right. Right.
So, so they've lost a huge percentage of their population
Hmm.
through death on the battlefield
Hmm.
and through just people leaving the country, fleeing
Right.
to other parts of Europe or the U.S.
Right. Right. And then the interesting thing is the second day that Zelensky is have disaster in White House, Putin come out and said, you know what, we have a lot of mineral, so we can sell this to America if you guys want. So that's very interesting development here.
Well, the point there is that yeah, there would be sales, and I think Trump in the long run is looking that eventually Russia will be our strongest trading partner
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
Europe.
Hmm.
And but as Putin says, we'll sell you these minerals. Come in and help us. Now, the problem with Russia and the Soviet Union is they've always been sitting on all of this mineral wealth in the ground, but
Hmm.
did not have the resources or the technical
True.
knowledge of how to actually mine that stuff, how to work it.
Hmm.
So yeah, Putin, would be willing, I'm sure, to sell it and boost their economy and our economy.
Hmm.
But what Trump was trying to do was try to find some way to make back some of the $350 billion we
Right.
gave Ukraine.
Right.
And that's what he was looking at. So if the Ukraine, and then
Hmm.
if the Ukraine made the deal and invites us to come in, then you're going to have U.S. experts, U.S. miners and agricultural experts in Ukraine working to help get those minerals out of the ground.
Right.
And then theoretically, Ukraine could sell and get proceeds, as well as some of it come back to the U.S.,
Hmm.
partially to repay what we've doled out to them over the last 4 years or so. And
Hmm.
I think that, from that standpoint, it probably was a good idea. But it goes back to what I said initially that who actually controls the ground of those minerals? So if
Right.
that's all in Russian territory right now, he doesn't need a deal with Zelensky.
Hmm. Hmm.
Eventually, he's going to need a deal with Putin. But the idea is if he can make one with Zelensky and draw, some from their resources, then, you know, uh, basically Trump's looking at show your gratitude, show that you appreciate
Right.
everything that Joe Biden did for you
Hmm.
with all of this billions of dollars that he threw out there with no controls, no audits, no
Hmm.
regard for how it was going to be
Right.
spent. So
So what
that's
do
the
you,
problem.
go ahead. I'm sorry, Tom.
I said that's the main problem now is that I don't see where this is going to go or
Sure.
what authority Zelensky has because he doesn't
Sure.
control the whole country.
Right.
Now
And
he does control the agricultural, the main agricultural part of the Ukraine,
hmm.
which has some of the richest growing soil in the world.
Hmm.
Back in World War II,
Hmm.
Hitler sent trains to the Ukraine and they were throwing the soil in the train cars to take to Germany to enrich their agricultural production. And
Wow.
so that was always widely known that their soil is just so perfect
Rich.
for agriculture. And
Hmm.
I think Zelensky still controls that basically,
Hmm.
but the mining, what's in the ground, I don't know. I don't know if he has enough control over it or if that matters.
Right. And what do you think? What's your prediction of the next movement from Trump's administration? So what he might do to deal with the situation, like current situation.
Well, I think right now what he's doing is basically telling Zelensky, we're not going to deal with you. And
Mm-mm-mm.
if you're not going to deal with us, you're not even welcome in the White House. Go home. And
Mm-hmm.
supposedly it was said on Friday afternoon that
Mm-hmm.
Zelensky's people were already calling the White House, no, 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 we want to come back and keep the meeting going. And Trump said, nah, I'm done. I'm flying out.
Mm-hmm.
He went to Mar-a-Lago Friday afternoon. And pretty much told Zelensky. Now, more things come out that Zelensky met with a bunch of Democrats before that meeting,
Yeah.
and they were probably they were probably telling them, you don't have to deal with Trump. Don't let Trump have a victory. Don't do this. Don't do that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's part of the antagonism that Trump felt like, I think realistically, that the Democrats were convincing Zelensky to undermine the deal and undermine Trump. And Trump's looking at that. I don't have to put up with this. You're not going to intimidate us, the US. So go home. Basically, get out and go home.
Mm-hmm. So do you think Trump is really want to sign the contract if Zelensky said, okay, I confirm that I am ready. I will come here and sign the contract. Even though, do you think Trump will do that? Or do you think Trump will say, no, no more
No, I
mineral?
think I think he would have because
Okay.
they invited him to the White House and we're going to have this ceremony and
Mm-hmm.
Trump was bragging about it and they ordered dinner to come in and all of this uh, stuff and uh, and then Zelensky pulls this, he's a tough guy,
Mm-hmm.
comes in, dresses up, in his commando sweater or whatever, and comes in with an attitude. And I think
Mm-hmm.
Trump looked at that and go, no, we don't have to take your attitude, pal. Go home.
Hmm. And there's one saying that because Ukraine and Russia both in Europe, so the war is the matter of the European people need to deal with. So American is because of the attitude of Zelensky, it's a good chance to American just say goodbye. We have nothing to do with you guys, and you deal with your own uh, affairs. And this is start at Europe and it stay in Europe. So we don't have any business to do with you. Do you think it's a good strategy for American? Just say goodbye. You do by yourself.
I would not underestimate Trump when it comes to strategy and deals and how to deal with, other people like that. And
Hmm.
I think that so many times you've heard in the last month or two when he's announced a tariff against some, look at first of all the people that we're getting out of the country and we were going to send to Venezuela or other countries. And they'd announce, we're not taking those people. They're not coming back here.
Hmm.
And Trump would basically convince them, yes,
To,
you are. And they did.
hmm.
Every one of those countries reneged on their initial bragging and took the prisoners back, except the ones that are going to Gitmo, which is a different story as well. So I think that I don't know. I think a lot of people, when Trump was announcing some of these tariffs and everything, you had Democrats already starting to, he doesn't know what he's doing and he's
All right.
he's not going to make it, they're not going to make a deal and they're not going to give, and every one of them folded, What do you
Hmm.
want, Mr. Trump? We'll do whatever you want. Okay, come get your prisoners or open your runways. We're bringing them down.
Hmm.
And there's not one of them still standing up to Trump over those issues.
Hmm.
So, so I think that that's an indicator that Trump kind of knows what he's doing when it comes to dealing on these kind of negotiations.
Hmm. Art of deal.
I
So
think
we'll
so.
see. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And then let's talk about the Epstein document. So I remember last time we were talking about the Epstein document, and then the Bundy said she will just release every single thing of the document. But the thing is, actually, she did not. So far, she have not got the documentation that they promised to give it to her. She
Right.
only released 130 pages, which most of the contents we already know. And then she went to Fox yesterday and talked about that, and then she just tell the anchor what happened during this week regarding the Epstein issue. So it seems like some people just don't want to cooperate with her. Some people withhold thousands of documents and just do not want to release to her. And what she said is, I will keep doing that, keep pushing that, and I will find the person and I'll file the person and I'll do the job. But there is no date. So it seems like I just wonder, can we really have some day to see the documents, the Epstein name list, everything? Can we see that? Do you
I think
still
eventually we're going to
confident?
see it because, the agents in New York
Hmm.
and the agent in charge of the New York office and some of the other ones defying her
Right.
um, aren't going to get away with it in the long run. They'll all be fired. And eventually, if records were destroyed, that's one thing. I have a hard time believing that they could destroy all the documents, even if they want to,
Hmm.
because the way that the government computer systems work is that, results of investigation recorded on reports or evidence obtained or any of that is entered, by law into the government computers. Now, that's what Hillary Clinton was trying to avoid in 2016, 2015, when she had computers installed in her residence that
Right,
were
right.
not going to be on the grid of the State Department system.
Hmm.
And pretty much the reason for that was that so these transactions that she was doing with uh, Clinton Foundation,
Hmm.
which most of them were corrupt payments,
Hmm.
she didn't want that recoverable as evidence, which it would have been in the State Department system. The head of IT for the State Department warned her when she was having those computers installed in her New York house,
Hmm.
don't do that. You're violating the law.
Right.
And I think
She
that's
still
another
did.
case where at the end of the day, here Trump comes into power 2016, 2017, or he runs in 2016. He's sworn in 2017. And pretty much it's clear that Hillary violated federal law, the Public Records Act, which basically says any business you do on behalf of the government has to be in the government computer system where it's retrievable
Hmm.
by anybody or and especially successors. So somebody comes in 5 years later, wants
Right.
to know, well, what was the deal we did with Venezuela or Colombia or
So yeah, you
Brazil,
need to,
whatever, and
yeah,
the records would
the
be there.
document. Hmm.
Now, if you recall, Colonel Ollie North working in the Reagan White House,
Hmm.
he made the deal with Iran, the Iran-Contra, and he made basically an illegal deal to sell weaponry to Iran in exchange, and anyway, the money that they would get would be off the books,
Hmm.
Iran-Contra. And Ollie North later, when he's accused of that, he starts destroying, going into his files and his computers and his office and everything, and I'm deleting he deletes everything.
Hmm.
He thinks.
Hmm.
Finds out later when they prosecute him, no, those things, if you did something on a government computer, it's there forever. You can't delete it. Only the government's own IT people could delete it later. So
Oh, so
that's part of the
Steve.
Federal Records Act. Like right now,
Hmm.
any reports that I wrote when I was an agent, the
Hmm.
almost 30 years, all of that's still in the system. I couldn't go in while I was in the FBI. I couldn't go in now and delete any of it. It's there. It's
Hmm.
there forever. So if
Hmm.
I did something corrupt, they could still have the evidence to prove that I was.
Okay.
And so Hillary, knowing that they were doing so many acts of corruption, taking money in allegedly on behalf of the Clinton Foundation to cure malaria in Africa and end starvation and then that. Now, the only thing it ended was poverty in the Clinton household. That
Hmm.
came to a screeching halt. They
Mm-hmm.
were becoming multimillionaires quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
she did not want, she's co-mixed. She was getting those grants, let's say, or the contributions from foreign countries by, accepting it for the Clinton Foundation, which was corruption. They
Mm-hmm.
pocketed, they paid for Chelsea's wedding and bought the house in New York. All the things that they were doing were
Mm-hmm.
taking proceeds going to the Clinton Foundation and pocketing the money, using it
Mm-hmm.
for their own personal benefit. And she thought, well, I'll have my own computer system, so nobody will know, nobody will see it. And that was the whole gist of, that we want to be able to subpoena your records from your computers and all of that. That's what started all that.
Mm-hmm.
And she got away with it. And partly she got away with it in a way was because after Trump gets into office, they
Mm-hmm.
have all the evidence that she did
Mm-hmm.
that she definitely violated the Public Records Act by
Mm-hmm.
having her own personal computer and using it improperly.
Right.
So the Trump administration could have easily prosecuted her at that time. They chose not to. And I think, it's like the monster movies where you don't kill the monster and then it comes back later to haunt you forever.
Mm.
And I think that's what happened with Hillary. She should have been grateful enough to keep her mouth shut and not be in the public eye, but no, she couldn't
No,
help herself.
no. So this is a lesson to learn. Um, you just mentioned that even though once document in the government computer system, even though you delete it, it's still there. So
Yeah, you
basically,
delete it off of your computer in your office or your laptop or your, mobile device.
right.
It's in the government servers. It's
So
not easily acceptable. So that's what I'm looking at now when they're saying that the Epstein file is being deleted by agents in New York or whatever. Now, they have physical evidence. They have videotapes that they took out of the Epstein apartment that
hmm
allegedly the videotapes are of various officials
hmm
having illegal sexual acts with minors. And
hmm
they have physical evidence of that.
hmm
So that, you know, they could take those tapes, take it out of evidence and burn them or, destroy them somehow. But the actual reports that get put into the investigative file,
hmm
those should be still in government servers. And that an individual agent in New York or an analyst in New York or even the head of the FBI in New York would
Sure.
not have the ability to delete those files.
Okay, that's a good news. Well, that's a big release to me because I'm thinking that if they destroy the evidence, then nobody can find the evidence, and then this is a big problem. So if the evidence will be there, it's doesn't matter when they get out, release the evidence. And also one more question is, Bondi said they already find some person who withhold the documents and they're going to fire him. Do you think the fired is enough? I think this is a criminal, right?
Yeah, it's
This,
criminal. And so for now, the firing is just mainly get them out of the office,
this
out of the organization. But uh, there would be ample evidence to be able to go after that person and prosecute, along the line, which I think we're going to see this time. I think maybe the Trump has learned that being nice, like in 2017,
doesn't work.
isn't gonna be a good idea.
Yeah. So that's why people are just asking, where's the arrest? Or we need to see someone's being arrested immediately. Because Bondi told Fox that she actually asking for this document the first day when she took in office. We're talking about 1 month ago. So still the New York office didn't follow her order for 1 month. And there she said there's a whistleblowers and tell her that it's not the 120 pages. There are thousands of pages. They have not gave it to you. I just wonder how Bundy knows so less for the case because I think she should know that the 120 pages is not the whole document.
Yeah,
How
she
did
should
she
have. She
know
should have
that?
known that was just the small percentage, and that don't be bragging until you have everything. And
Yeah, right.
in fact, when she was asking for or demanding or whatever the files,
Hmm.
Kash Patel had not yet been confirmed as
No.
FBI director.
Yeah.
So who is she going to trust in the FBI to be willing to work with her that
Hmm.
wasn't involved in covering up those files or hiding them or whatever until
Hmm.
Kash Patel? Now,
Right.
one of the things, kind of brilliant on Trump's part is Kash Patel was a victim of illegal spying, when he was working for Congress and investigating the Russiagate case. And, he was illegally a subject of FBI investigations. Tulsi Gabbard, before just within the last year, was named put on a terror watch list of some kind that she shouldn't be able to fly. So you have a number of people that were actual personal victims
Hmm.
of the FBI or the government going after them.
Hmm.
And so they're well motivated to
Right.
look into the wrongdoing of the FBI and DOJ and others.
Right.
I think it'll come out. It's going to take
Great.
a little longer than Pam Bondi, I think, didn't realize the degree that they would obstruct her,
Hmm.
but we'll see where that goes. We'll see how many people not only get fired, but get prosecuted.
Right, right, right. And I remember last time when we talked about Kash Patel, um, I asked her, what's your prediction of his performance in FBI? And I remember first thing you said is he will face a lot of obstacles. So many people will give him hard time. It's not easy for him to get into the FBI, to do the right thing in the FBI, to adjust the whole phenomenon in FBI. So you're talking about it's not easy job, but he will get it down.
And he
Maybe
still doesn't have his number two, Dan Bongino. Now,
right.
Bongino, over the years, wrote multiple books, very detailed books
Hmm.
about the wrongdoing of the FBI, of the government,
Hmm.
and he became very expert in the Russiagate
Hmm.
investigation
Hmm.
that they did improperly, as Kash Patel became expert in that
Hmm.
and was on the receiving end. So the problem now is that Patel doesn't have his services yet. Bongino's got all of these financial array, co-owner of Rumble
Hmm.
uh, website, and
He need to
the other money interest that he has that he's trying to turn over to his wife, and it's going to take, and he said it was going to take 2 or 3 weeks to be able
oh
to get out of all of these financial entanglements, turn it over to his wife,
right.
and turn his investments into where he can't access them and all of that
Hmm.
before he was going to be sworn in as deputy director. So I think he's probably close to maybe another week or two finishing
Okay.
that. And
Okay.
then Patel will have another expert in all of the illegal things the FBI and others did,
Uh-huh.
going back to the first Trump administration.
Right. That's good. We cannot wait. It's yeah, there's just so many things that need to be done, and we have a very, very high expectation for them to do the job. And we personally, I do believe and I have confidence on them. And they are warriors and they are patriots.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so very much. There's so a lot of information that you gave to me. I need to translate into Chinese. And thank you so much. And I really appreciated that you give us the confidence that the Epstein name list, the most important part is the name list will come out. It will take longer than we expect because I saw lots of people just very disappointed on that. We did not see the name list as promised at the promised date. But
Yeah, and that's only part of the issue who went to the island and what, because he had lawyers and business associates and other people.
right,
But, I think there's enough indication that Epstein was working as basically like a Mossad from Israel agent to get
right.
all of these public officials,
Mm-hmm.
whether from the UK or whether from the United States,
Mm-hmm.
to go to his island
Mm-hmm.
and to have improper, immoral, illegal sex with underaged,
Wow.
people. And it might just be not just be underage girls. You could have underage boys, you
Hmm.
know, for some of these officials that are gay, that would be
So,
looking for a relationship with a little boy. So
mhm,
all of that, I think, was designed so that Israel could keep control of Congress. Through Epstein, they could threaten to blackmail every official that did any of this and
mm,
keep their power going.
well,
And I
so
think
that's
I
a
think
power,
that's what the big part of this was all about.
right? Well, thank you for mentioning that. So that comes another big question is how American, um, the relationship between American and Israel. How can we continue?
Well, the relationship with Israel has been almost a U.S. subordinate. They've gotten pretty much everything they've wanted,
Yeah,
whether it's Netanyahu or whoever. We want this aid, we want more bombs, we want,
right.
theoretically, they shouldn't need the money, but whatever they've been asking for, they've been getting,
Hmm.
including the votes on the Hill supporting them.
Yeah.
And so, for Mossad to be able to blackmail our people
Hmm.
is very successful espionage and tradecraft operations. So Epstein was performing quite a service on their behalf, if
Right.
that's what was. And much like our CIA or Britain's MI6 do around the world, get people compromised and have them in a position where they have to do the things we want them to do and support what we want them. But I think Israel, there have been many people that say Israel has way too much power in the United States
Yep.
to have everything they want all the time.
Right.
So,
So should we allow them to continue to do so as an independent country, as U.S.?
well, you can't, well, the way to prevent it is to have the evidence that that's what they've been doing, manipulating us and controlling us that way.
Mhm.
So we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what happens now with the Trump administration because this has been going on for years.
Right. So we'll see. Well, this is a real question, is how we deal with Israel, which is our
There's a
landmark.
lot of real questions how we deal with a number of countries.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Tom. I
Well,
really
thank you. My
appreciate
pleasure.
yeah, really appreciate the information inside of your knowledge. Really enjoyed that. And I will see you next week.
See you next week.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
Yeah, you too. Bye.